I think then it is for me to greet everybody for this live discussion on 12th of May, which is part of the Europe Week celebration in Nepal. We just heard the lovely Nepali national anthem, which shows that we are in a context of celebrating a national day, which is the European National Day. But I would like to start actually also saying that I'm very grateful that we have all managed to meet together on this video screen because of the current COVID pandemic. Just let me say a few words that how concerned we all are, the international partners of Nepal, about the current news and the dreadful situation in hospitals, and how much we are actually currently working on trying to find international solidarity to help with the oxygen supply, to help with the plants, the tanks, and the other supplies. My colleagues in Berlin, I think François Xavier's colleagues in Paris, currently very busy trying to put together help for Nepal in this difficult situation. This shows how much Europe cares. We have been the biggest vaccine supplier worldwide, and we are trying to also help in this current crush, which has come from the second wave coming in from India. Still, I think it's a Europe Day celebration, and we are happy to be with you and to bring you another of the big concerns of the European Union, which is our engagement to promote equal rights between men and women, which is our engagement with feminism in Nepal. Both of us, François Xavier, the French ambassador, and me, the German ambassador, have been extremely interested in the past 4 years to meet with those activists who carry this battle within Nepal. And we're very proud today to have two of them who will talk to us about their struggle, but also about what Europe might mean for them in their work. It's Bushita Basista and it's Sarita Pariar, who are both activists, and they know each other and they respect each other. They come from very different backgrounds. I think that's important to show the multiple faces of feminism in Nepal. And just to say that Sarita has been impressing me very much. I went recently again on YouTube and on the internet to see what is there about you, and it's incredible how present you are in the last years and days. You're a writer, you publish in the newspapers, you're also an activist, and you have a foundation which was actually founded by your late husband. And I was very moved seeing what you wrote about him, for instance, in the second anniversary, and how you have carried on your own. It's not that you are your husband's follower or so, but we all have a common struggle. I think it's also a good way of showing that men and women. So I'm very grateful that you have found the time to be with us today, and we are preparing for a discussion about your struggles, about what Europe can bring, and you'll have a few questions to quiz us, the ambassadors, also, I think, in the end. Let's make this informal and easy, but I think before I go over to give you the floor and ask you about my first question to you, I will give the floor to François Xavier, my French colleague. You should know that the European Union is the Franco-German Union. Only if this couple works together, the European Union can do something. Not everything. We can't govern the European Union. But if we don't work together, nothing else works in the European Union. That's why we do this together. We both have kind of engagement with feminism in Nepal. Would you like to come in for a moment?
A very good morning to all of you, and warm thanks to our two guests for attending this online conversation. And I think that this, as you know, this is a European week, and obviously gender equality, discrimination issue is one of the key topic of the European policies. So as Nepali women, they represent 44.4% of the Nepali population. I think it was important to take some time to talk about this situation, this specific topic here in Nepal. Since my arrival 3 years ago, I had many occasions to meet really very bright, very brilliant female leaders in Nepal. For example, Bhavani Rana, the former president of FNCCI, or Shrinkala Kachiwada, Miss Nepal, who was our goodwill ambassador, and many, many others. So I think it's very important to have this conversation today and to talk about this specific issue of the situation of women in Nepal. And I'm very happy to have both of you. I would like to make a special focus on Bhushita, as in fact, I was a little bit embarrassed to characterize you, as you have many, many activities, and you have a very, very interesting profile. And so I understand, so you're a publishing editor, you're a writer, you're a poet, but you're also very interested in spirituality, many, many topics. And when we met, I was very impressed by your knowledge about French philosophy, European philosophy, and writers. So I think, Sarita and you will bring from your own experience a different view, a different look at the situation of Nepali women in Nepal. Over to you, Roland. Thank you.
So, Sarita, when I came here almost 4 years ago, I handed over my letter of credence, the letter which with my president tells the Nepali president that I'm going to be the ambassador of Germany. And I handed this over to a woman, because the president of Nepal is a woman leader. So my first provocative question to you, a Dalit woman, is that everything is done? Is things fine? Because my country has a chancellor who is female, and actually one of the most promising candidates for the next election coming on in September is, again, a woman, a young woman. And I'm handing over my letter of credentials to a woman. So everything is fine, isn't it? Where are you Where do you stand on this? Let me provoke you a little bit. Come on, Sarita.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Schaefer. I'm really, moved by your kind introduction. And I think you're right. I mean, so we have, a woman president, and in your country, the most promising candidate. So what is, everything looks fine, right? So I think first I really want to say thank to the organizers for inviting me to join the EuropeDay celebration. And here, special thanks to you, Ambassador Schaefer and Ambassador Leje, and the team who really helped me to prepare, for this event. So I think what I would say, frankly speaking, that I have had, very limited exposure and engagement with the Europe and the European Union, including its role and priorities in Nepal. So, coming to respond to your question, I would say, frankly speaking, there is not only one kind of woman in Nepal and around the world, right? And it's extremely important to recognize the differences. And Nepal is a country, which is one of the most stratified country, and the caste-based discrimination is so much entrenched, right? So, which is why I just, do not understand that why in 21st century that people are not, they're just denied to practice their basic, human freedom, right? Because if you're born in a particular community, then even we people are not, given, freedom to marry with someone of our choice. And people are blatantly killed. They're murdered. And, like Dalit children, they are facing such a deep discrimination even inside the school, right? And Dalits, if they even have to go in, like, in access to public, like drinking water or any kind of resources, even they have to, face such a humiliation, like beatings, killings. And I think this is something very important that one has to pay attention to, right? Indeed, I feel proud that our country has a women president, but at the same time, who does she work for, right? Which is why I think this is something important aspect that everyone should, pay attention. And I think this is what, EU, I think, stands for, basically talking about freedom, human dignity, peace, global harmony. And I think, this is what I would like to, and I'm more than happy to engage some of the questions that we wanted to engage. Yeah, let me stop here.
Thank you very much. Just a little follow-up question, perhaps. I'm quite aware of what you were going to say, and that was a bit of a provocative question, of course, at the beginning. But your question is of course, right. Who is one working for if one is in the president's office? And although she is certainly an activist who has been doing a lot about women's quota in the parliament and so on, there's so much more to be done on the side of which you said, this intersectional violence against women, if Dalit discrimination comes together with women discrimination against women and children. Where do you see right now, personally, the most urgent need to act? What is your main struggle right now in your foundation or in your writing? Where is the point where everyone should sort of kind of hit at to get things moving?
I think it is, to my mind, what it is coming right now is like, of course, when we talk about Dalit women, the violence against Dalit women is so much, there. And, there has been there have been many cases like Angira Pashi or Samjhana Kami. There are many cases, like that. So the kind of ignorance that I see from Nepal government is so much painful, right? With the Rukum case, I'm sure you are very much familiar with the Rukum case, right? Because 6 men, they were blatantly killed. And the kind of, attention that Nepal government is giving is it's very questionable, right? Because the victim, each time when I talk to the victim's family, is, all of the victims' families, they are continuously telling me, instead of getting justice, a lot of people, the perpetrators, I know I have to be careful when I say this, but at the same time, it seems like the process is going to be really long, and which is hurtful to the victims, right? And similarly with this, Angira Pashi's case, it is happening the same thing, right? Which is why I think as a Dalit citizen, it feels there is an absence of Nepal government. I must say this. And I think this is not only I am saying, this is the voice of more than 13% people in Nepal. And if we talk about Dalit people, we have, according to International Solidarity Network, Dalits are more than 260 million people worldwide. And even similar cases are happening in India. And, we happen to hear from BBC, the police are, confidently saying, look, we have to protect our women. And we have to protect their honor. And which is why, they're again blaming the victim. And they are so proud to say that in BBC. They have no hesitation at all, which is why I think this is one of the issues that we can, start our, work. I think this is what one of the prime, at least violation against Dalits. Mm-hmm. That would be my primary concern, at least for the moment.
Sarita, coming to Pushita, perhaps, about the first question that we had shared, which is, when you're thinking about Europe, what is the main image or the main symbol, and the meaning that you come to your mind, please, as you're fond of French literature, French philosophy?
But I think before I dwell on the question of Europe, which is very interesting, and I'll come back to it, but I also have certain opinions I would like to share on the question Ambassador Sheffer had to ask to Sarita. As you were having this discussion about, we having a women president in Nepal, it sort of like reminded me of a time when Indira Gandhi was appointed the Prime Minister of India in 1966. And we had a very senior Indian freedom fighter leader. He commented that this is not a victory of a woman. I do not consider that only because Indira is the first woman prime minister to head India, I do not consider this victory of women, because I consider Indira won this election as the daughter of Nehru. So in a country like Nepal, South Asian country, we are not really credited by our own merits, but because who we are in relation to our husbands or our fathers. I mean, the post-war, the post-Maoist revolution, there has been a lot of talk about reservation and quota system. And yes, like women are represented, there's 33% quota reservation. But then if you really analyze the participation of women so most of the women in parliament, they are either wives of somebody, they are either daughters of somebody, they are related to somebody powerful. So I think the representation of women in Nepal is still in the phase of numerical. We are still in a symbolic phase of representation. And having said that, Nepal is also a country where women have always been, worshipped as goddesses. There's been an apotheosis of the feminine. We worship women, goddess. There are temples everywhere. But then I believe that this process of apotheosis, or either to see somebody as a goddess or a demon, is to disrobe her of her. So I think it's not just enough that we elect a woman in a symbolic space, but we also empower her with the actual legislative power, with the actual executive power, and from which we still have a long way to go. But coming back to the question about Europe, it's very funny. I grew up in a very small town of Dharan, and it was a routine. I think some of my friends would remember from back that time where internet was not the thing. We used to get all our information from radio. So early in the morning, my mother would. So basically, I heard about Europe when I was a child. In the news, I used to hear a lot of news about East Europe, like Bosnia, Herzegovina, and Chechnya. And so, my first formative ideas of Europe came from East European conflict. So I always saw this Europe as an area where there was a lot of conflict, there was a lot of fight. But then, of course, I grew up and I read books and it got like more consolidated and more complex. But yeah, that's how I encountered Europe in the beginning. Thank you.
Okay. My question is, so coming from Dharan or coming from the provinces, so you come to Kathmandu as women, and you are both active in various fields, literature, poetry, or social activities. How do you feel that you can reach some position of responsibility, and how you are being heard by the political circles, the people in charge of power here in Kathmandu? How do you feel? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's an interesting question, because I think Nepal opened up to a democratic process only in 1950s. And it was the same year, around 1950s, women education was institutionalized in Nepal around 1940s. And then women got their voting rights in the 1950s, along with everybody else. In that regard, I mean, we are a very nascent democracy, and we are a nascent country in terms of women education. It's not even been 100 years since we've started practicing democracy or institutionalized women education. So I am the second generation working woman in my family. My mother was a working woman, and then I'm a second generation working woman. And now, in a capitalistic system, I think the economists say that power is anything that enables you to make decisions. And in a capitalistic system, that power mostly comes from financial independence, So Nepal has been a country where women did not have property rights until 2018, which is like just, 2 years ago. So I have been working, my mother had been a working woman, I'm a working woman, but then we are still, like I said about the president, we are still a symbolic representation of the working woman. We've not really been sufficiently empowered in terms of education, in terms of financial independence. But then I also see that we are a country in transition. We are transitioning into an aspirational space where these could be realized, and the recent property right is just the step into that direction. I feel that I have more opinions than they are relayed to or heard across the political domain. Yeah, but I think the signs are positive.
Thank you very much. I think the same question I would like to ask this to Sarita also. About this access to power. What would you say about this, coming from a different background? And maybe you can add also something about marriage, because we have been touching this a little bit. We were saying that sometimes women were only perceived as the daughters or the wives of someone before, as the current president. He started out as the wife of Madam Bandari. Is there anything special about this? But maybe first, access to power.
Yeah, I think this is a very important, Bushita, that you have raised. And most of the time when I, talk with Dalit women, especially the parliamentarians, like they often share me like how difficult their journey have been, right? So coming from like far west and coming from a Dalit background, I think they have the least power, And I think I would say, like for the first time in history in 2008, there was like significant numbers of Dalit parliamentarians, and among them there were like few Dalit women parliamentarians as well. So, like, I think Dalit women are not treated as like independent human beings, They have brains and they can think equally, right? And their hardship has taught them a lot. But what most of the time, So, yeah, I think having power, being in a position where we can exercise power means a lot to a Dalit woman, right? So, which is why I definitely want to highlight that Dalit women should be treated independently. And the other thing that I want to talk about is most of the time what I hear in media is like the dynamics of power, is like most of the time these Savarna or these so-called upper caste men, leaders, they often use the language that, oh, we are the people who have brought you here. And you should not forget who have, really helped you to be where you are now. And I just don't agree with this, narrative, because they are the one who have been extremely working hard to be where they are now, right? Which is why, yes, it makes a lot of difference, to be in a position where you exercise your power. For example, like if there is a parliamentarian who have come from the first past the post system, and the other ways is to come from the proportional representation, right? It's not about that. It's about, even if you have come from the proportional representation, but if someone is a Dalit, then yes, they can use their power, but at the same time they have such a limited power. Whereas the same woman who have come from the PR, who is non-Dalit, but she still can exercise her caste privilege, So which is why there is a huge difference that I would say. So which is why I think all I want to say is, we should be treated equally.
And I think the same is true for François Xavier. Can I just move a little bit the discussion by taking on what you just said, Sarita and also Bushita, about this power, the issue of power. And I'm looking a little bit at what Nepal might actually be able to teach us, the European Union member states, because you have this quota system, for instance, and you have more women in the national parliament right now than we have in the German Bundestag. There's less than 33% in the German Bundestag right now. And there is a discussion, shouldn't we, the so-called developed nations, also adopt this principle, because it works to a certain extent in Nepal. I read recently that it's not the same thing in the three different levels of government: central, provincial, and local level. There were a few stories about especially Dalit female representatives of the people in the municipal level who said, we are treated as Dalits and we are not being treated as members of parliament, of the local parliament. What is your feedback in your work with the people on the ground? Is actually the local government's higher role now good for women, or is it actually a problem? Maybe Sarita, you start, and then Bushita. Again,
yeah, I think this is a crucial question, Ambassador. I think these are, I would say, like kind of first generation women politicians, right? Working at the grassroots level and also provincial or central level. I think a lot of, I do have great hope, because even in such a short period of time, they have made significant changes. At least I can see, right? And I have written about this, like there is a kind of prejudice that how the upper caste, so-called upper caste people and men in general, they simply cannot accept the knowledge that Dalit women have, right? So the point is about, since we are living in 21st century, but how can somebody treat, like someone like, how not, even they don't share their meal and they don't invite in social functions and, they don't actually feel, important to share the information with Dalit, officials. I have heard so many stories that they often complain like, most of the time we don't even get the information and we are just bound to sign in certain kind of documents. And if they raise questions, then again they are told like, being as a Dalit woman, how you dare to even ask question to us? See, I mean, this is something fundamental, question that we have been wrestling, whether we talk about Mustang or whether we talk about Madhes, like journalists like Binu Suvedi, and there are other, Dalit journalists who have been writing about it, like how they're exercising power at the local level, right? So which is why sometimes what I actually, think is like, on the one hand, it seems that there has been representation, but it is not as substantive as it's supposed to be, right? And I think Dalit women are making like tireless effort. For example, Parvati Bishunke, I have great admiration for her. The kind of work that she has been doing, right? Even with this Rukum case, Dalit parliamentarians and the activists, they have been playing huge role, right? So which is why I think what I would like to say is, I know I have to be hopeful, but at the same time, I always doubt, am I hopeful or not? So which is why I would like to say that we can see a kind of shift in a way, but all I need to say is we have a long way to go. Yeah.
Thanks. Education still, and
just to, if I may jump into the discussion at this point, I had met recently a young Nepali lady, Prakriti Batarai, who created an NGO which is Women in Politics, and so the purpose of her activity is to empower women, especially at the local level, to get them more involved, more efficiently, more professionally in the field of politics. So it is a way to implement somehow so what is in the Constitution of 2015. So my question would be, do you think that this process is necessary? Both of you come from some provinces originally, or you're not from Kathmandu. And so how do you feel it, the need to train, to empower the women and the girl locally, to help them to fulfill finally the possibilities that they got from that constitution? Thank you. Mm-hmm. Over to you.
Can I take this, Saritaji? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I got a little alarmed when Ambassador Schaefer told us that the moderator was sleeping. I mean, I hope we are not as boring as that. I hope, the conversation is making some sense. But yeah, we are discussing some very, very pertinent questions. And when it comes to women and political consciousness in Nepal, I would like to regress to the question the German ambassador was asking. What could Europe potentially possibly learn from Nepal, the political events in Nepal? This is a very pertinent question because, writers or philosophers like Edward Said have pointed out a very interesting polemic in understanding of the East and the West, where they say that West has been perceived as the masculine power, as the power that can conquer, that can change, and East has been perceived as the shy, the damsel in distress who needs to be educated, who needs to be saved, who needs to be pitied and sympathized. So he says that it is very important for us to see each other as equal, to have a conversation as equal, that, East is not necessarily. I as a South Asian woman, when I converse with people around the world or when I participate in world literature, I do not really see myself as a character of sympathy. On the contrary, I see myself as a very empowered woman. And why do I say that? So when we talked about the legislative representation of women around the world, Nepal has a relatively high bar. We have, at least numerically, at least symbolically, we have greater number of women parliamentarians representing women in Nepal. And that has been possible because Nepal has been one of the very few countries that went through a proper revolution in the 21st century. And this has been, people like, again, Karl Marx, the German philosopher, who continues to cast a very long shadow over Nepali politics. He said that he talked about revolution, how it is only possible in a pre-capitalistic society. And Nepal in 21st century, it transitioned into a revolution that sort of like spiked the political consciousness of everybody, but including women, because women were the four frontliners, the forerunners of revolution in Nepal. They planned revolution, they made ammunitions, they made strategies for a war. So the political consciousness among women I see in Nepal is very high compared to people otherwise. We're also politically sensitized. So yeah, can Europe learn something from Nepal? I think so, yeah. I think so. Saritaji would be able to put more input into that. But in Nepal, Nepali economy has largely been sustained by the craftsmanship of women. And also they are the main financial decision makers. However, as I said in the beginning, the women education, the institutionalization of women education began in Nepal only in 1940s, which means that women do not have the linguistic skills to express what they intuitively know about decision making, about finances, about management. They've already been well versed in this, but they don't have a institutionalized proficiency in language or communication matter to translate that. But then I am comparatively, I feel very hopeful about women's political consciousness in Nepal. Yeah, and I think there is much Europe could learn also from women in Nepal in general.
Good to hear that. And actually, I just remind us all of the fact that we are now moving into the second half of our conversation, where we decided we would actually give you also the time to question us and give us question to us. So we're in that part already. It's 9 minutes over already. So I think, but the transition was very good. And thank you very much, Bushita and François, for leading to it. What would your question be in this context, Sarita?
Thank you so much. I was about to say that, we definitely don't want to do like one-way conversation since we are enthusiastic to ask you some questions. So I would start with like very basic question, like what can we learn from the experience of, European Union dealing with equality and questions of dignity, especially of, members who are most marginalized communities, for example, like Roma people or the new immigrants, right? So that would be really helpful for us to make sure some ideas. So why don't you share with that?
So should I take it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, good. Well, it's a really profound question, but a very important one for our own identity, because you should know that, of course, European Union is only a political construction which is born out of our tradition, but it's also something very new. I mean, the European Union in its existence is as young as female voting rights in Nepal, or as you said, it started after the Second World War. So it's also a very new and fresh experience to try and do something together based on a very old and long tradition, but that's the same thing in Nepal. I think what is, to me, characterizing the most this new experience of the European Union is that we are trying to start from practical questions. That was the solutions which Jean Monnet tried to bring forward after the Second World War, which was a huge catastrophe for the whole of the European Union members, especially for my own country, but for France as well, which divided everybody. There was this incredible speech and this incredible drive to find ways of connecting the economic possibilities of the European nations so that they would have a common interest in developing steel and coal and not go to war over these things. It was a very clever thing to say, look, you need steel and war to make war, steel and coal to make war. Let's put this in common so that no one can take the decision for himself to use this against the other. So it was a very inward-looking philosophy, and Europe is actually right now learning how to look outward. And that's the creation of the diplomatic service only in 2010, which allows Europe to have a diplomatic voice outside, not just to be a donor or a sort of a coming together of different countries, but one voice, which is the European ambassadors. And thanks to the European Union delegation for organizing this and giving us, the two ambassadors, the occasion to say that. And perhaps answering more closely your question, I think it's right that we can learn from Nepal the benefits of disruption, a revolution, and this very stratified society. It's very clear in Nepal that a Dalit woman is doubly underprivileged. And sometimes this is liberating to be so clear. It's more complicated for a woman in Germany probably to understand not that she's discriminated against. I think every woman sees this very quickly and understands it very quickly. But to make it very clear how this works and where it comes from, it's sometimes more difficult. And on this path, I think what the European Union has been creating, apart from the economic unity, is the unity of justice. I think that's what, for me, characterizes the European Union right now, that we have a common space where everybody has the same rights and where non-discrimination is the marching order for all member states and the Commission. We have created another instance above the national governments which can tap on our fingers if a state does not follow the non-discrimination order in terms of women or in terms of minorities. The Roma are interesting, and that's my last point, because the 10 to 12 million Roma which are in the European Union, and not only the European Union, but also in European states, they had a long time of being recognized. And they were victimized in the German history, in the European history, by the German Nazi regime, by Germany, because one forgets very often that not only Jews were killed in the concentration camps, but Roma just as much. They were victims of a genocide. And that's why we are going a little bit against our tradition in Germany right now. We recognize minorities, only very few. There are only 4 minorities, ethnic minorities, which are recognized as entities which should be looked after more carefully, and the Romas are. The Roma are actually one of the 4 minorities recognized as living in Germany and having specific minority rights. The other are Danes, and there are the Sorbs, and the third one I forget right now. But the Roma are one of them. Although only 120,000 people in Germany qualify as Germans and Roma. So it's an issue which I think we have to still work on, and especially if François Xavier comes in, the French tradition of dealing minorities is very different from the German tradition, and it's not easy to come together. The big thing which I think Europe tries to be to itself, but also to the world, is a space of justice. You can move around in the European Union and have the same rights and be protected by this overall institution of non-discrimination wherever you go. So over from me, maybe François Gaillet, you want to come in?
Yeah, just to complement this, that's quite a paradox that we have in EU 10 to 12 million Roma people. This is approximate figure, but they are more or less in every country in EU. And the paradox is that they are still facing, we have to recognize that they are still facing a lot of discrimination, access to education, access to health services, access to employment. And there are also some difficulties to move around in Europe, which is also a paradox because, as Roland just said, we have a freedom of movement for all EU citizens. Mm-hmm. So having recognized this, I have to say that EU is trying to tackle this issue, and we have some very, very comprehensive action plan and to try to face this issue and to try to improve the condition of this Roma population. I just investigated a little bit on the internet, on the European Union website, and there are some action plans with the English version. So I will send you the link if you want to have more details. In France, I would say that the vision of what is a nation, what is the citizenship, what is the French identity, what is the relation also, for example, to laicity, is very different from the one in other countries. So it means that we have also obviously to recognize this diversity and to also to try to face and to solve that kind of discrimination, which exists everywhere in Europe, but also in France. But I think we are very proactive on this and trying to bring some solution, also to respect the choice of life of these people who want to keep their own identity and their own tradition. This is very important also.
Thank you. This is a very interesting discussion. And I think this discussion provokes a thought process, which is beyond the scope of this conversation right now. So maybe we can have this conversation outside. This is provoking a lot of thoughts in me. But my question right now is, I would like to dwell a little bit on the idea of ecofeminism. France has been the hotbed for breeding like really fiery feminists, throughout the generation. And I find it very interesting, the concept of ecofeminism, where feminism is understood vis-a-vis the cycle of nature, regeneration, the process of decaying, death, and then that pace. I feel, in this modern world where everything is so fast-paced, I feel that we've lost that rhythm and that feminine understanding of regeneration, growth, decline, cycle. We miss that. And when I talk about feminism, I'm also nostalgic for that pace, this rhythm that honors and imbibes this cycle of nature, of farming, of agriculture and everything. So I also want to know a little bit on both the ambassadors' view on feminism. And also this is in relation to feminist diplomacy, as French embassy has been practicing since 2018? Please correct me if I'm wrong. But what does feminist diplomacy mean? And how do you see feminine quality in the modern world? How important, how therapeutic, how regenerating? How do you see feminine qualities for the context of the world right now? Anyone could take the question.
I think I'll contradict.
So perhaps I'll take the floor first to say that, in fact, the French diplomacy, we have two main axes regarding feminist diplomacy. The first one is to have this women and girl empowerment issue in every aspect of our diplomacy and cooperation. It means that we have a French development bank, which is AFD, and this AFD is under the umbrella of the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they have the instruction to have this specific topic in mind in every project and to prioritize this project. And this is very important. And they are mostly active on Africa continent and also Southeast Asia, little bit less in South Asia. But they got that specific instruction from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and also the Ministry of Finance. And they created a specific fund dedicated to support some feminist activities, feminist NGO. This fund is quite significant because the total amount is 120 million euro. And its purpose is to support some activities related, I say, to women and girl empowerment, especially in the field of development. And but the second aspect is we have to also to look at ourselves and to see what does it mean to develop and to implement feminist diplomacy for the diplomat themselves. So my administration, they have a very, very active, proactive vision about it, which is to raise the number of senior diplomats having some, the rank of managers in headquarters or as ambassador. And now I think in a few years of time, we moved from 11% of female ambassador now to 26%. So we have to do much more, obviously, but every new ambassador, every ambassador which is appointed for the first time as ambassador, every diplomat, 1 out of 2 should be a woman. So it means that in coming years, obviously, it will be we will witness a very strong movement, and obviously with the new generation of female ambassador coming to more responsibilities inside the French MOFA. So I have many colleagues, female colleagues. Obviously, they are all very competent, very professional. And personally, I'm very happy that they could reach this position because really, professionally, they deserve it. They deserve it. And personally, to give more a personal note about it, I would say that when I was in Paris before coming here to Nepal, once I was in a meeting with all my senior manager, including my own director, and I saw that they were all women, female civil servants. And it was the first time in a few months or even year that I saw, they are all women. I was the only man in the meeting. But it means that for me, it's very natural and very normal to work with female colleagues and to work under the authority of a female colleague. And really, I think this is perfectly normal, and I truly respect their competence and their professionalism. So I think it will continue, and I'm very happy with that. So I leave the floor to Aurora if you want to complement it.
Yes, thank you very much. Of course, I have to say the same thing as you said in your introduction. In our development cooperation work, the feminist aspect is always there. And we always need to tick the box in every project. We need to actually certify that this is benefiting to women. And if you install solar electric cells in a mountain village in Nepal, it is actually so that women don't have to go and fetch water and can pump the water up. So it's always there. However, I was very worried when I heard Bushita say that there's the Orient was seen as feminine and the West was seen as masculine. And and also the question about whether there is the green movement is a more feminine movement than the capitalist industrialist movement. In my view, this is not conducive, to say the least. I wouldn't say it's bullshit, but it's something I just react against because the women I know and I listen to, and my own wife, who is a feminist, will tell me otherwise. The best example of a green organic farmer in Germany is a friend of mine, and he is a man. And the only thing I can derive from that is that the lesson, if you wish to have a reasonable, sustainable contact with another culture, be it Orient or Occident, or with another person, be it a woman with a man, the main thing is respect. The main thing is for the man or for the richer, the more powerful partner to say, well, I'd rather respect that partner because in the future she might be my boss or so. I've myself worked under a number of bosses who were female. The two first high representatives of the European Union for the chief diplomats were both women, Cathy Ashton and Federica Mogherini, and I was working under them. I was chosen by a woman to be in the European diplomatic service, and I had women bosses. I didn't always like it, but the main thing was to respect, to say, look, this is your job, this is my job, and let's go ahead. And I try not to be different than if you were a man. Of course, there is always a difference, but that's then individual. So I'm not in favor of all this theory about the Earthgeist and the female wanderings and things. I mean, it depends on the woman whether she wants to have this part of her coming out or not. Most women actually don't. They want to be seen as brains and people who have something to say and go into power. That in the long run, women may change the way power is exercised. We'll have to see. Maybe, but maybe it's not just women. I mean, and again, this is something I should take back when I go back to Germany from Nepal. Speaking to both of you, it's more important that women have power and that they are part of the power game than how they play it.
Exactly. Yeah, if I may interrupt, because this is a conversation, French conversation, and not German monologue like we agreed last time. Yeah.
That's so my part, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I credit you. I learned something from you. But yeah, I think we're on the same page. I think you're not really contradicting me when you're saying that. What I'm trying to say here is I do not believe in stereotype gender roles. You know, like I inhabit a body of a woman and therefore I'm only feminine. Is that true? It is not true. I have very masculine traits as well. I am very ambitious. I want to be heard. I want to be accepted more than just an organ, memory organ in my body. I want to be also seen as my mind. So what I'm trying to say is we are composites. We are not stereotyped, stratified binaries. I'm not a man and a woman, and nor is world. We need to embrace. So when we talk about power, is nature and is slowness and is introspection and self-reflection, is it less of a power? I think it is also a kind of a power. It's also a softer power. When I talk about feminine and masculine, I do not talk about them as a gender, but more as an archetypal classification. So, Ambassador, I'm very happy to stand together with you. I completely agree with you on that matter. I want to be perceived as a brain. Yeah.
I have to jump into the conversation to say that unfortunately we're coming to the end of our online discussion. There would be so many things to share and to say today. I would like just to say I have to conclude on the behalf of all of us. And I would like to thank you and say that I'm sure that the audience now, they understand that Nepal really, in Nepal, the role of the women is very instrumental, that we have very brilliant, bright, clever, smart women, and we will come to some position of responsibility and who are now, talking, expressing, taking position, conducting some projects. And I'm sure that it will be very, very important for Nepal in the future, in the pace of democracy, equality, and also development. So the embassies, Roland and I, we will be there along with you on this path. Thank you so much, and I'm sure we'll continue that discussion in another other opportunity. Thank you to all of you. Thank you, Radi. Thank you, Bushita. Thank you, Sarita.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.
Good. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We should
Now,
have a
thank
conversation
you.
outside.
We will-
Yeah.
We will meet again and then
We'll meet again for sure. Yeah.
you.